It always begins the same way. They are charming, calm, unnervingly collected. Nothing about them sets off an alarm, not at first. They look like everyone else. They laugh when others laugh. They hold eye contact just long enough to seem sincere. They mimic empathy with precision. But behind the perfectly timed smile, behind the polished surface of normalcy, something essential is missing, and you do not see it. Not at first, because the most dangerous people are not always loud. They are often the quiet ones, the helpful ones, the ones who tell you just what you needed to hear. Not too much, not too little, just enough to lower your guard. The truth is, psychopathy rarely looks like the movies. It is not always blood, crime, or rage. It often wears a suit. It smiles at your parents. It offers you a ride home. It remembers your favorite drink. A true psychopath does not fail to understand human emotion. They understand it frighteningly well. They study it, mirror it, weaponize it, and most people never notice until it is far too late. The Canadian psychologist Robert D. Hare, one of the world's leading experts on psychopathy, developed what is known as the Hare Psychopathy Checklist. It is not a tool for casual diagnosis, but it offers a clinical mirror into a personality so empty, it must feed on others to feel alive. And yet, what is chilling is how many of these traits hide in plain sight, because they blend in. That is their power. The first trait is superficial charm. They are likable. They know how to smile. Their words feel easy. Their compliments never stumble. They are not socially awkward. In fact, they seem to understand people better than most. But it is all practiced, not felt. The charm is skin deep, built to reflect back what you want to see. The second one is a grandiose sense of self-worth. They believe they are special, not in a healthy, self-assured way, but with an inflated confidence that bends reality. They talk over others, dismiss facts that contradict their view. They see themselves above rules, above others, above consequence. Even failure does not humble them. It angers them. Another deeply disturbing one is pathological lying, trait number 3. They lie effortlessly, about everything, even things that do not matter. The truth is fluid to them. It is not sacred. It is a tool, a suggestion, a temporary placeholder until a better version suits them. And when caught, they deny, deflect, or turn it back on you. The fourth trait is a manipulative nature. They do not ask, they maneuver, with smiles, with flattery, with silent guilt. They know how to shift your boundaries without ever pushing. They praise you right before they use you. They apologize right before they repeat the same behavior. Now, the fifth one is the lack of remorse or guilt. When they hurt someone, they do not flinch. Not internally. They may act sorry if it benefits them, but there is no internal pause, no true reflection. They move on without a bruise. What broke you meant nothing to them. The sixth is something harder to spot, shallow effect. Their emotions seem real at a glance, but something is always missing. The tears stop too quickly. The anger turns off too fast. The grief feels rehearsed. It is as if they learned what emotion is supposed to look like, but never fully inhabited it. The seventh trait is callousness and lack of empathy. They do not feel with others. They do not connect in pain. They study pain, but they do not inhabit it. Someone else's suffering is a curiosity, not a concern. They may comfort you, but it is hollow, a learned behavior, not a shared experience. Now here's the eighth, a parasitic lifestyle. They take, in small, subtle ways at first, favors, time, tension, resources, then more. They do not build, they attach. To people, to systems, to opportunities. They survive by draining others. And when the host resists, they move on, coldly, without closure. The ninth trait is poor behavioral control. Under stress, the mask may slip. The irritation bubbles too fast. The rage appears from nowhere, but it never lasts long. They catch themselves, readjust, recalculate, but in those flickers, you see it's something cold, unchecked, primitive. The 10th one goes way back, early behavioral problems. Most adult psychopaths show signs young. Cruelty without guilt, dishonesty without fear, charm without connection. It is not always obvious, but the signs were there, and often ignored. The 11th trait is a lack of realistic long-term goals. They dream big, speak in grand terms, but plans are shallow. Success is often short-lived or borrowed. They chase attention, not purpose. Achievement is a mask, not a mission. Another one, number 12, is impulsivity. They act without pause, cheat, lie, leave, spend, destroy, without thinking it through. Regret is alien to them. The future, irrelevant. They seek only what satisfies the moment. The 13th is irresponsibility. They blame others. Deadlines do not matter. Promises are flexible. Dependability is not part of their wiring. When held accountable, they pivot. Excuses flow, but responsibility never lands. The 14th is the failure to accept responsibility. Even when clearly wrong, they spin the narrative. Blame the system, blame the victim, blame timing, but never self. Apologies are rare, and when given, they are strategic. And finally, the 15th trait is a long pattern of short-term relationships. They do not bond, they latch, until it stops serving them. Then they detach, coldly. Their relationships are performances. Once the script stops working, the curtain drops. These traits do not always appear all at once. And not everyone who shows one or two is a psychopath. But when they appear together consistently, across time, across people, they paint a pattern, a hollow pattern, a shell of personhood, polished on the outside, but lifeless underneath. The neurologist James Fallon once discovered, through his own research, that his brain showed all the structural markers of a psychopath. And yet he lived a normal life. Why? Because not all traits become pathology. Environment matters, parenting matters, and not all who carry the wiring become dangerous. But those who do, they do not arrive screaming. They arrive smiling. They blend in. They pass your tests. They earn your trust. They read your needs. Then they hollow you out slowly, never violently at first, not obviously, just enough to make you question your own reflection. Psychopathy is not a myth. It is not a metaphor. It is a clinical reality, rooted in neurology, behavior, and repeated emotional patterns. But perhaps the most terrifying part is not the traits themselves. It is how normal they can look. They do not come cloaked in shadows. They come dressed like friends, like partners, like mentors. You see them at dinner parties. You pass them in hallways. You trust them with your children. You follow them into businesses. You open your life to them because something in their presence feels calm, confident, protective. And that is the trap. They do not break down your door. They open it for you and then quietly remove the exits. One of the most devastating aspects of psychopathy is how it damages others through proximity, not just intention. They may not always set out to destroy, but destruction follows them. It follows them because they lack the internal mechanisms that protect others from harm, empathy, remorse, genuine attachment, responsibility. Their goals are shallow, but their hunger is real. They want what they want, and if your peace is in the way, it will be taken. There are people walking around with emotional wounds that have no name because what they went through was never physical. It was not violent in the traditional sense. It was psychological erosion, silent manipulation, death by 1,000 emotional cuts. And that is how the psychopath operates best. Not through spectacle, but through corrosion. Slowly, invisibly, you think you are making choices. You think you are choosing to stay, to trust, to believe. But what you are really doing is adapting to an environment carefully constructed to override your instincts. And by the time you realize it, you no longer recognize yourself. That is not weakness. That is what happens when you come into contact with someone who studies your humanity only to unweave it. People often ask, why would someone stay close to a person like that? Why not walk away? But that question only makes sense if you assume that clarity was ever part of the equation. With a psychopath, you are never given the full picture. You are given fragments, just enough affection to keep you hopeful, just enough logic to make you doubt your own fear. They do not steal your strength. They erode your clarity. And without clarity, the strongest person can be broken. The psychologist Martha Stout, in her book The Sociopath Next Door, warned that roughly 1 in every 25 people could meet the criteria for psychopathy or sociopathy. That means many will never be diagnosed. Many will never be identified because they function, they smile, they move through life unchecked, often rewarded for the very traits that make them dangerous. In corporate settings, these traits can look like leadership. In relationships, they can look like confidence. In crisis, they can look like control. This is why psychopathy is not always a diagnosis of criminality. It is a diagnosis of emotional absence, of moral vacancy. It is not always about what they do. It is about what they do not feel. And when you try to confront someone like this, when you try to hold them accountable, the mask cracks, but only briefly. They shift, they blame, they charm, they escalate. You may leave the conversation more confused than when you entered it. Because what they fear most is not consequence, it is exposure. And they will do whatever it takes to preserve the image. There are survivors who walk away from these relationships not with scars, but with silence. They are not sure what happened to them. They just know something was wrong. They know they became someone they did not recognize. They know they stopped laughing the way they used to. They know they became anxious, apologetic, confused. They lost their edge, their joy, their sense of reality. Because that is what long-term exposure to psychopathy does. It does not just harm, it rewires. It alters your sense of self. Your emotional compass becomes dependent on the approval of someone who has no real map for empathy. And so you orbit them, trying to win something they never planned to give. That is not love. That is psychological starvation. The psychopath's world is one of surfaces. They live in a hall of mirrors. Everything is a reflection of how they want to be seen. There is no depth, no inner life, no emotional landscape. Their personality is adaptive, not authentic. And if you mirror them back, if you begin to play their game, they may keep you around. But if you step outside the script, if you challenge the role they have assigned you, they will either punish or discard. Often both. That discard can feel abrupt, cold, unnatural. One day you are central to their world, and the next you are invisible. There is no closure, no goodbye, just absence. Because to them, people are not people, they are functions. Once the function stops, so does the connection. This leaves a trail of people who question their worth, their sanity, their instincts. But the problem was never you. It was that you were human in the presence of someone who was not practicing humanity, only simulating it. Neuroscience gives us some answers. Studies have shown that people with psychopathy often have reduced activity in areas of the brain linked to empathy and emotional regulation, particularly the amygdala and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. These regions help us recognize fear in others, connect emotionally, and make decisions with moral weight. In psychopaths, these areas appear underactive. It is not that they choose not to feel. It is that their brains are structurally detached from certain emotional cues. But that detachment, combined with high cognitive function, creates something chilling. A person who can calculate emotion without ever participating in it. That calculation is what allows them to mimic us, to blend in, to fool therapists, to fake sincerity. And because society tends to trust surface performance over emotional reality, they often get away with it. In some cases, they are celebrated. But not all psychopaths are violent. Not all are overtly cruel. Some are simply hollow, incapable of deep emotional bonds, indifferent to the pain they cause, uninterested in repair. These are the ones who leave you bleeding and call it a misunderstanding. The ones who ghost you after years of closeness and never look back. The ones who smile when you cry, not out of pleasure, but out of disconnection. They are not always abusers. Sometimes they are just absent, present in body, gone in soul. So how do you protect yourself? Not by fearing everyone, not by distrusting all charm or confidence, but by listening to your nervous system. Your body will often feel what your mind cannot articulate. Confusion, tension, hesitation, the sense that something is off. These are data points. Respect them. Also, observe patterns. One lie is a mistake. A pattern of dishonesty is a map. A single betrayal may be forgivable. A string of them is a language. Look at how they speak about others. Look at how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Look at how they handle being told no. That is where the mask slips. And do not ignore the small violations, the subtle dismissals, the emotional contradictions, the quiet erosion of your boundaries. Psychopaths rarely start with cruelty. They start with confusion. They rewrite reality so gently that by the time you realize it, your foundation is already gone. It is important to say that not all difficult people are psychopaths. Not all cold people are emotionally dangerous. Some are traumatized. Some are avoidant. Some are just lost. But psychopathy carries a distinct signature, a lack of emotional resonance, a pattern of harm without guilt, a performance of connection without substance. And if you find yourself recovering from someone like this, understand that the process will not be clean. You are not just grieving a person. You are grieving the illusion they constructed. You are deconstructing the false self they offered you. You are peeling away layers of doubt, shame, and self-abandonment. That takes time. But there is life after this. There is clarity. There is the quiet relief of no longer living under a gaze that never truly saw you. There is the return of your own voice, your own rhythm, your own light. And the next time someone seems too perfect, too polished, too tailored to your needs, you will not run away. You will simply slow down, watch, and listen to the silences between their words. Psychopaths do not need you to fear them. They need you to trust them. That is where their power lives. In your belief, in your silence, in your willingness to explain away the harm. But when you stop doing that, when you start naming the patterns, honoring your instincts, and walking away before the mask breaks, you take that power back. Not all psychopaths wear a label. Not all leave a trace. But they always leave an impact. And healing begins when you stop blaming yourself for what you did not see, and start honoring the part of you that finally does.